Hey, it's been a while. I have not posted for a long time. I'm gonna give you a really quick intro. Very quick. I had a lot going on in my personal life. I moved a few times. I bought a house almost a year ago now. It was a year ago now. It was in July of 2020, and I got a new job. I got my big girl job, and life has just been very hectic, and I haven't been able to do this. And I have a book haul. I've bought a lot of books. I have so many books just right here. I have two books that are still on their way, which I will mention, but I want to start with, I've read a handful of them while I was waiting on some of the other ones to come in, so I'm going to start with the ones I've read, and then we'll go into some of the other ones after that. So I have my stack here that I read, and then I have like 3 stacks over here of other books. So first book is Sputnik Sweetheart. Now this book I read after I read Norwegian Wood. I adored Norwegian Wood. I do have my criticisms of it, of course, but Norwegian Wood was just so beautifully written. It makes me think of like when my high school self loved John Green and just like the lyrical way that he wrote. This author writes similarly, but more for adults, I would say. This book was good. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed Norwegian Wood, but basically this book is, we're reading this from the perspective of Kay. And Kay is in love with his best friend, and she, Samir, I don't know if that's how you pronounce her name correctly, but she starts to fall in love with this older woman, and she ends up disappearing when they're on a trip. And it's a really good book. I enjoyed it. It's not like one of my absolute favorite books, but I did enjoy this one. I love like a romance, and this is a bit of that, but it's also primarily it has like, I don't know if you consider it a thriller, but it's got a mystery aspect to it, and it's very raw, and it deals with a bit of, I would say, like mental illness kind of, or just she has some personal issues going on in her life, but yeah, I enjoyed this book a bit. This is a TikTok book. They both die in the end. I enjoyed this book. This is a very fast-paced book. It was really easy to read through. I enjoyed it. It basically the plot of this book is there's this thing called the death cast, and basically it calls you, telling you you have 24 hours to live, or you're gonna die within 24 hours. Now within this, Mateo meets this boy named Rufus, and they kind of live out their last day together, and it's a good book. I'm not gonna spoil it, but I did enjoy this a lot. And also, I'm really sorry if I'm not very good at explaining plots very well. I'm not a booktuber, but I have been getting into reading again, and I'm trying my best. But this was a good book. I enjoyed this a lot. I read Howl's Moving Castle. Now this book I bought because I absolutely love the movie. Basically it's about Sophie, and she got turned into an old lady from a witch, and there's a wizard named Howl who people say like eats women's hearts and like is like a villain, but she finds herself in Howl's moving castle, in his castle, and I will say I really enjoyed the movie a lot more. Howl's character in the book is a lot more of a little player than in the movie, I would say, but I enjoyed reading the book. It was good. I like the movie better. This is gonna make a lot of people mad at me. I bought Song of Achilles. I read this one. I didn't enjoy this at all. Now this is basically about Achilles and Patroclus? Patroclus? I don't know how to say his name. I'm so sorry. It's Greek mythology. If you like Greek mythology, you'll probably enjoy this, but this ends up being a romance throughout the Trojan War that's happening. You see everyone in the world crying over this book, which I get. It's just, for me, this book didn't quite do it for me because of the fact that, like, I feel like it focused more heavily on the war than their friendship and their relationship. And for me, I felt like I didn't have a deep enough connection with the characters to care. This book is really slow for me. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I read the Convenience Store Woman. Now this is a cute little book. It's very short. I read this in like one evening, but basically it's about this woman who works at a convenience store, and she's very, very happy in her little life at the convenience store, but everyone is so worried about her doing more with her life, getting a good job, getting a husband, doing all the life things. And she's just very happy in her little convenience store life, and it's a cute little read. I have my critiques of it. For me, it felt like, why does everyone care so much about what she's doing with her life? Like, just let her live her life if she's happy. But she really does care about what others think, and she kind of feels like she has to be a certain way. And this book kind of goes through her life and thought process throughout that, basically. This book has been my favorite book I've read thus far. Like, this is like a new holy grail book for me. Like, this is gonna be like an all-time favorite. But this is My Dark Vanessa. This book is difficult. And I don't mean in a way that, like, it's hard to understand. I mean it's difficult in the terms of it's heavy. It's heavy, especially if you're a woman who's gone through things similar. This is kind of hard to read. But basically this book is about a 15-year-old girl, and she gets into a romantic relationship with her 42-year-old teacher. And it kind of goes between this high school experience that she had, and then years and years later as an adult, when the Me Too movement is coming through, and he is getting called out for some of his actions, and how she is interpreting this. Because the big part of this book that makes it different is she doesn't feel like she's a victim because she actively played into the role of this relationship. She wanted it. She was it wasn't like she felt like she was being assaulted. She felt like she played an active role, and she didn't feel like a victim. Whereas these other women, you know, they were like, we're victims, like, are you okay? So this book was really, I love this book. I couldn't put it down. It was very difficult to read through some points, and it really, like, as an adult reading this, you're like, you see the manipulation happening throughout their relationship, and you know, she doesn't feel like she's a victim. She doesn't feel like anything's wrong because she wants this, but you can even see in points that she doesn't, and it's really sad. And also I've seen this. Like, here's the thing. She feels like she understands people who do go through this, and, you know, that they are victims, but she isn't. And she has to go through this process of trying to figure that, like, why am I not a victim? Why do these other girls feel like they're a victim? And she's kind of challenging those thoughts. I could go on and on about this book. I adored this book. It also referenced Lolita, which is a classic book, and truly, if you can read something like this and you're in the mental place to do that, this is such a good book. Such a good book. And then the last one I read, before I get into the ones that I have not read yet, is The Hating Game. I love a romance, man. This was such a good book. In the beginning, I was like, I'm not so sure about this because there were some bits where it seemed a little bit like cheesy. Like, so let me tell you the premise of this book. Basically, Lucy works with this man named Josh, and they hate each other. They hate each other. But they work in the same, not like a cubicle, they work in the same office, in the same room, and they just hate each other, and they give each other such a hard time. And the the parts that just always made me cringe a little bit were she made her password on her computer like, I hate Josh. I hate Josh. And I don't know, that was just like so cringy to me that I was like, this like so unnecessary. I don't know. But this book was so good, man. The other part of this is they're rivals in the workplace because they're both going up for this the same promotion, and they're gonna have to have the competition of who gets that. But it of course turns into a romance because Josh, he's so soft for her. Like, it's so sweet. Like, he has this very like tough exterior, and he's like so standoffish and like gives her such a hard time. But whenever you start to see their relationship blossom, it's very, like, you can see just like how soft he is for her, and it's such a good book. I loved this one as well. My apologies if the angle on the camera changed. My card got full. Anyway, those are all the books that I've read, and now on to the ones that I have not read. These are on my to-be-read list. I'm gonna start with this because these are all together, but I got the black edition of Death Note. I got all of these. I have the 6 of them, but look how stunning these are. It's the black edition, but look at these. These are so... these are so pretty. So I have all 6 of them here in my lap, but look at these. Oh my gosh, just sitting on the shelf, these are so... I'm so excited to read these, man. And the thing is with like graphic novels and like manga and stuff, is that I hate buying the small individual ones because I read through them in like 20 minutes and I spent $12 on that when I could buy a novel for $12. But these have like, this one has volumes 1 and 2, 3 and 4, so each of these have 2 volumes, and it goes up to 12 obviously because there's 6 of them. So I will go through these a lot. It'll give me more time to read through this, but of course, you know, these, it's not always about how much time you've spent on it. They've got a lot of art, which is great too, but I'm so excited for these. I loved the anime. This one I bought thinking it was a novel, but this is a graphic novel. Swallow Me Whole. I really don't know much about this. I just know it kind of talks about like mental illness and madness, it says, and love. So I'm excited to read this, but really, truly, isn't this just so stunning? I was like, I want this cover, and anything that has to do with mental illness, I'm like so down to read. But I got it, and I'm like, oh, it's a graphic novel. So I'm still excited to read this, but it's just not what I thought it was. But I have Swallow Me Whole. Oh, I had one more that I did read. Sorry, this is Somebody's Daughter. This is a memoir. This was recommended by John Green, one of my favorite authors, and he said that this was one of the only books where he read the whole thing and then immediately reread it. So I was like, I gotta read it. And this is a beautiful memoir. Basically, it goes through Ashley's life as a child and through adolescence. And her father's in prison. Her mother, you know, she has some issues with her mother. Her mother is moody. She doesn't treat her very well, and she gets assaulted, and she ends up keeping that a secret. And it basically goes throughout her life and her journey as she grows into an adult, and it was really good. This is the bit I got in the mail today. this one, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Basically, this is now mind you, I haven't read any of these, so this is just my best at explaining it from what I've heard from others, but basically this is a letter from a son to his mother who is illiterate, or she can't read English, and it talks about his family history, and they moved to, I believe, the US from Vietnam, and it's I'm assuming talking about his life with her growing up in it as I don't know, I've just heard such great things about this book. People have said it's just so beautifully written, and I'm excited to read through this. These two books kind of pair together. A Beautiful Disaster was one of my favorite romances. I have read through that book so many times. It's just, I love the trope of like this dude who every girl wants, and he just only wants her. And Beautiful Disaster was just such a like, I just adored that. But I found out from someone else on booktube that the same author made A Walking Disaster, which is, I believe, the same story through his eyes. I'm so excited to read that. But then I found out they had a sequel, A Beautiful Wedding, and I had to buy it because I loved Abby and Travis's relationship, and I gotta read these. I have to. And then they also apparently have a spin-off of the Maddox brothers, so if I enjoy these, maybe I'll read those, but I love Beautiful Disaster, so I at least had to get these. So the next book, after the Eclipse, I just thought this cover was so stunning. Basically, the gist of this, I guess, I haven't read it, this young girl, she's 12, she sees a partial eclipse, and a few days later her mother was murdered. So she's trying to find her mother's killer. I guess it says 12 years later. And it talks about the trauma that she goes through because of her mother's death. And this is a memoir. This isn't just a novel, this is a memoir, which I thought was so interesting. So I'm very excited to read this. And also, I just look at that. It's so stunning, man. Now, I mentioned that the book My Dark Vanessa referenced Lolita, which is a classic. I've had this in my wish list for like ever, and I have never bought it. And then I was reading My Dark Vanessa, and I'm like, maybe I should buy it. Maybe I should read it. I should read it. And the reason that this, if you don't know, is so heavily like referenced in My Dark Vanessa is because, as far as I can tell, it's very similar in the fact that it's a much older man with a younger girl. I don't know too much about it other than that, but I originally was interested in this because I was a big Kat Von D fan, and her biggest shade was Lolita, and then I remember everyone being like, that's so controversial, Lolita has such a bad meaning behind it, and I was like, what? And I started looking into it, and it's based on this book. Now, I bought The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I don't know much about this book other than the fact that it talks about like a woman with mental illness. Have you noticed a trend? If you haven't, you will when I get through this stack too. But what's her name? Uncarly. You'll notice I bought a lot of her recommendations, but she says it's like a red flag book because if someone loves this, then... But she loves it. And I love reading about sad women because... Same. So I'm excited to read this one as well. I bought Such a Fun Age. So this is about a woman who's babysitting, so she's a black woman, and she's babysitting a child. And whenever she's in the supermarket, a security guard sees this black woman with a young white girl and accuses her of kidnapping her. And it talks about race, obviously, so I'm excited to read through this one. I can't describe these ones very well because I haven't read them, but this is just the gist of what I'm getting. This one, look how beautiful this cover is. The ones we're meant to find. So basically what oh my god, and even look at this. Oh, it's so pretty. Basically what I've heard about this is there are two sisters. Maybe I should read this. One of the sisters woke up on the shore of an abandoned island. She has no idea how she got there or what her life was like before. Somewhere beyond the horizon is her sister, who's escaped the island to try to find her. I'm so excited to read this, man. And that's kind of the gist of what I know about it, is that they're separated, one tries to find the other, and I've heard it's really good, so I'm excited to read this one. This one may be the next one I read, to be honest. The Invisible Life of Addy. This is my last pile here. The Invisible Life of Addy. I didn't realize how big this was. So this one, you've heard of it. You've heard of it. And if you haven't, I'm going to briefly try to describe this. But basically this woman basically sells her soul so she can live forever. And whenever she does that, there was the catch to it that anyone who meets her will instantly like forget about her once they like leave her line of sight or whatever. And she's lived her life like this until I guess one day someone remembers her, and I don't know what happens from there, but this has had such rave reviews. I'm sorry, I have hair on my face. This has had such rave reviews that I have to read it. The Silent Patient. This one is apparently about a woman who out of the blue murders her husband, and then they take her to a psych ward, and all of the therapists are trying to get her to talk, but she won't say anything. She won't talk about what happened or anything. And then this one therapist, the psychotherapist, jumps on the opportunity to work with her, and he's trying to, you know, figure out what happened. And I've heard great things, and I want to read it. I'm excited to read that one. So this one was an UnCarly recommendation, Normal People by Sally Rooney. Honestly, I don't know much about this other than the fact that, like, I think they've said it's sad. And I'm going to read you the quick little blurb because it's not very much. But Connell and Mariana grew up in a small town, but the similarities in there at school, Connell is popular and well-liked, while Mariana is a loner. When the two strike up a conversation, awkward but electrifying, something changes. Normal People is a story of a mutual fascination, friendship, and love. It takes us from the first conversation to years beyond, and the two people that try to stay apart. So I think it's a love story, but they talk about, or UnCarly's talked about, how it's deeper than that, so I'm excited to read that one. I have This Is Pleasure. I don't know too much about this other than the fact that it talks about this woman who has this loved one in her life. I don't know if it's a friend or if it's just someone she knows. It's someone close to her. But she finds out they either are, I don't know if they're a rapist or if they just sexually assault someone, or they find out something along those lines. And the process of the thought process and what happens to you and that person's friendship or relationship after you find something out like that. Because, of course, you know, it's someone you're already close with. So I thought that'd be an interesting read. It's very short. This is the longest one I've bought. A Little Life. Now, I'm going to preface this with the fact that I love reading books that make me sad. And I asked, what book should I buy? And everyone said this book is just all the trigger warnings you could ever imagine. So I don't know anything about it other than that. So I'm gonna read it. It's long. It's like 800 pages. But you see people reading this and just bawling their eyes out, so I'm excited. I bought Know My Name by Chanel Miller. If you're unaware of who this is the woman who was assaulted by Brock Turner. Originally, she wasn't known. Her identity was private. And I remember reading whenever she came out with her statement. It was such a long statement, and I read through that whole thing, and man, it was heartbreaking, and she wrote so eloquently, and I know there were likely lawyers who worked on that with her. But when I found out she had a memoir, I bought this so fast. I'm so excited to read this and hear her story. Then I bought Before the Coffee Gets Cold. Look how cute this is. So basically what I understand about this book is that there's this coffee shop. I don't know if it's supposed to be magical or what it is, but whenever you go there and you get coffee, you can, I believe it's time travel. You can go to any point in time in the past and you can sit and talk with whoever you like, but only until your coffee gets cold, and then once that happens then you're back to your normal life. So I just thought this was interesting, like an interesting like plot. I bought Hood Feminism. Now this book I guess talks about basically the little quote it says up here is notes from the women that a movement forgot. So I guess this talks about women of color and their position in the feminism movement and what happened throughout that time. And I was reading the like the reviews of this book, and people were saying every white person needs to read this, man. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it. 7 Days in June. I just heard this is a good romance. I can't tell you anything this is about. I don't know. But I bought it. I'm gonna read it. We've Always Lived in the Castle. Look at this, man. I don't know much about this. Some of these I don't know much about. I'm so sorry, but I wanted to get this one. I don't really have many books that are like this kind of genre, so I grabbed this one. This is another one. These next few I don't know as much about. The Broken Wings. This one I thought had such a pretty like cover. Someone recommended this and they had this cover of it, so I went to go buy it. And this one, man, it literally looks like someone typed this on like, I don't know if you can tell how big this is, man, but it literally looks like someone typed this on like Word. Look at that. I know you can't tell, but or here, look at that. Look at this. Anyway, it's short. It's apparently like a romance, a poetic novel from 1912, a tragic love. I'm gonna read it. I got Hidden Valley Road. Now apparently this is a true story about a family who had, how many children? I think they had like 10 children, and 6 of them, yeah, 6 of the 10 children were diagnosed with schizophrenia, and this was in the mid-1970s, before schizophrenia was like widely known. So I thought this would be a really interesting read, and this is also a true story. Could you imagine? I have another Murakami book, Men Without Women. I don't really know much about this one, but all the Murakami books that I've read so far, which is only 2, I've really enjoyed, so I have this one as well. We're almost done. This should have been sooner. I'm sorry. John Green, The Anthropocene Reviewed. If you know me, I'm a John Green stan. I read Looking for Alaska when I was in like 7th grade. Adored it. Read all his books. And this is the first like adult book that he's came out with. And I'm so excited. If you've heard his podcast, The Anthropocene Reviewed, I believe this is just like a collection of short essays. But like the way John Green writes is just so stunning, and even if you just listen to his podcast, the way he talks about anything is just so stunning. Like he can just take the most mundane thing and just make it just sound so beautiful and like romanticized, and just like truly, I'm so excited to read this. And it's the signed copy. Also, is purple. So pretty. So I'm very excited to read this as an adult. Now he come out with this adult book, so I'm very excited. And then lastly, it's the last book, The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, another very popular book. I haven't read this one yet, but basically this Hollywood icon, Evelyn Hugo, talks about her life with a reporter, and she goes through her life. She had 7 husbands, and I guess it talks about, you know, her time in the limelight. Oh, I have 2 more books that I have on the way, so let me pull these up. Wendy Cope, this cover is so stunning. Wendy Cope, Serious Concerns, this book. This is a poetry book. I believe it was Carly who recommended this. it wasn't her, it was Ali V. I don't know how to say her name either, but someone recommended this, said it's just truly stunning poetry, so they read a bit out of it and I was like, buying it. And then this one I'm also excited for. This one was by Ali V or Ali B. I don't remember how to say her thing, but Lonely Castle in the Mirror. She read this, immediately adored it. Look at that cover, so stunning. So I ordered that. So I have those 2 more on the way. I can't tell you what this one is about at all. It's also, people said if you're a fan of Before the Coffee Gets Cold, which I just had, that you would like this book. But I bought books. I have a lot of books, and I'm sorry I didn't know all the plot lines of all of them. Some of them I just like to go into without knowing as much about it. And that's that. So these are all of my new books and my to be read books, and a couple of them I did read. But yeah, if you like book content, let me know and maybe I can start doing some book content. Have a good day. Thank you for watching. Bye.